What's up, everybody? Today we're talking about HDRIs and what they can do very easily for your scene in terms of lighting and creating depth. I've got a little demo level here that I'll demonstrate what we're looking at today, and if you're not excited, then it probably means that you already know about HDRIs. Just walking around a little downtown scene here, you can see it's like a bright midday sort of bustling downtown center. Pretty plain sort of Jane downtown core, and this feel and this depth is really being created by this HDRI backdrop. So if I turn that off, you can instantly see the difference. Just going to turn that on and off a couple of times to kind of really show you, like, watch the reflections off of the buildings that are created, you know, watch the extra depth that's created by adding those buildings in the background. Really, really cool and powerful tool, HDRIs. The other thing that's really cool about HDRIs is they're hot swappable. So in a matter of 2 clicks, I completely just changed the dynamic of the scene from, you know, middle of the day sort of smoggy downtown core to this sort of bustling night view with some really cool sunset lighting that, you know, can peek in over the trees and things like that. And this is all done from HDRIs. Pretty cool. So if that's interesting, stick around and I'll show you how to build this scene, how to take advantage of HDRIs, how to do all of this with free assets. Some really cool stuff, and I'm going to do it all in Unreal Engine 5 today. Otherwise, we'll get into it. We're going to go to HDRI Haven, and we're going to get a bunch of free HDRIs. We're going to go to KitBash 3D, and we're going to get you some really cool Neo downtown assets for free. And we're going to start a new project in Unreal Engine 5, and we're going to learn all about HDRIs. So let's get to it. So the first thing that you'll need to do is you'll need to go to kitbash3d.com. In the description below is the link if you're looking for it. Once you're there, just click over to the kits. And I think about 2/3 of the way down, there is a Neo City pack right here. This is the one you're looking for. It is $0. You can grab the individual license. Under formats, feel free to grab any sort of format that you're interested in. The one that we're looking at right now, however, is Unreal, and it's compatible with UE4. They haven't made it specifically compatible for UE5 yet. However, you can port it over, no problem, so don't worry about that. Set up an account, get that free asset. Once it's downloaded, you will have a folder like this, a zip folder, UE4. Inside it, you will have the KitBash 3D Neo Cities UE4 project, and you'll actually just have a Unreal Engine project. You can copy this folder over to wherever it is that you store your projects. And once you've done that, I've already gone ahead and done that ahead of time, you'll have a project folder like this, and you can actually go in and look at the project in Unreal Engine 4. But we're working in UE5 today, so let's start up UE5 and convert that project over. At the time of this video, it's still UE5 Early Access, so that's the version that we're going to be using. In the project browser, we just need to find our project. KB3D Neo Cities. I believe that is correct. Yes, that's it. Cool. KB3D Neo Cities UE4 project. U project Neo Cities. Okay, perfect. So that's the one that we want to open. Open a copy. So now that's going to translate that over to UE5. Sure. Let's see what happens. While that's loading, why don't we check out HDRI Haven. So again, if you go to HDRIhaven.com, link in the description below, you'll come to this site. Up at the top, if you click on HDRIs, the really cool thing is you'll have a ton of HDRIs to pick from, all these different types. You can click on any of these filters to sort of filter down to a specific category. You've also got a bunch of filters with the amount of different assets listed on the left. If you click on any one of those HDRIs, the really cool thing that you'll see is this license CC0. So if you're not familiar with licensing, Creative Commons 0 is the best type of license because it means you can use the asset for whatever purposes you want, and you don't have to give any sort of credit or anything like that. So these assets are awesome. So just maybe as you're downloading them, just make sure on each one of these that you check out the license and it says CC0. So for our purposes, we're going to get two specific assets. Both of them, I believe, are urban. One of them is the Shanghai. You can just search for it. Yeah, we're going to download this one. Shanghai Bund. I'm sure that's the right pronunciation. You'll just go over here, and then I just get a 4K asset, 4K HDRI, and that'll allow you to scale up to 4K if you want. If you want to go crazy and get the 8K or 16K, by all means, feel free to play with that. But for our purposes, just grab the 4K HDRI asset. And then the other one that we want to grab is the Wharf. There it is, Canary Wharf. Grab that, again, 4K. Lost my screen. What happened? Oh, my Unreal 5 just loaded. That's why I lost my screen. 4K, go and download that, the HDR, and you'll have both those assets. Of note, I do want to point this out to you. There are some assets that don't come in HDR format. So, for example, I think this Falzer, however the heck you say it, this forest asset comes in an EXR format. If you download one of those, let's go ahead and do that too. Let's download this asset, and I'll demonstrate what the problem is and then how we can fix that. Cool. Okay, so with Unreal Engine 5 open, I'm going to have you go up to the Edit menu, up to Plugins, and then HDRI, and you'll want to make sure this HDRI backdrop is enabled. I've already enabled it in my previous project, so I guess that's why it's auto on already. And then just when you check that, it's going to ask you to restart a little, I think, white window will pop up in the bottom right. Just click that and then restart your project. And then after that's done, we can just close the plugin screen, and your plugin for HDRIs will be enabled. And so if you navigate over to your place actors and you just type in HDRI, you'll see this HDRI backdrop, and you can actually just drag that into your scene. And you can use the tool here to move your HDRI around, and you're basically started. The other thing that you can do is, I'll show you a couple of things, is in the settings section here, you'll want to make sure that your plugin content and your show engine content is checked. And what that does is that just expands the folders here on the left to allow you to see all of the extra programming content that's stored in these folders that aren't normally accessible. So in this case, the HDRI plugin that we enabled, we're now able to see this folder here, and we're able to access some of the contents. And so this is all of the content that's driving this HDRI backdrop that we dragged into our scene. So you can actually go through there and you can see the blueprint itself. You can see the different materials and how they've set those up. You can see the different dome shapes and environment shapes that the HDRI can mold to. And then you can see the sample textures that they come with. And here's all of them here. Okay, so that's the basics of sort of the HDRI. But what I want to do is I don't really like how this level's lit, and I don't like the settings of this default level for the KB3D, KitBash 3D project. And so what I want to do is I want to get some of the standard Unreal Engine content back into our level. So if you're familiar with opening up a new project, you can go and you can select starter content, like the third person starter content and whatnot. You can also, with a level already created, just go up here to the add button, go over to add feature or content pack, and you'll be able to add a lot of the same content that you could have when you first opened up a project. So we're actually going to do that. We're going to add the third person project here as well, and you can see the folder just got created. And then we're going to add the starter content. We may use some of that. Cool. And then we're going to get out of this level. So I'm going to go to the third person. I think the level should be in here. Yeah, third person BP. And then we're going to go to maps. Whoop. And then we're going to open up the third person example map. We don't have to save the level that we created because we didn't do anything really cool there. Cool, and then it's going to take a little bit. It's just going to compile our shaders. You can see that happening under there. And we'll just let that sort of take place. That's cool, that's cool, that's cool. I guess while we're waiting, what we can do is we can do a couple of things. So we can go back to our place actors. We can look for that HDRI backdrop again. We can drag that into our level, and we can sort of just place this thing right above the floor there. And now we've got this HDRI in. I'm going to delete this back wall. I'm going to delete one of these side walls, and we can just kind of see how our HDRI looks in the default third person level. Looks a little better than that KitBash level that we were sort of messing around in. Yeah, I'm just trying to get this. I think this is snapping. So up at the top, I'm just going to turn off, all of this sort of snapping stuff, and I'm just going to try and get this floor a little bit more accurately to his feet. There we go. Good enough. Okay, with that done and set up, we can start looking at the settings for these HDRIs and just kind of show you how it works. So first things first is an HDRI is set up from a camera being put in a central location, and then the camera sort of getting 360 views and panoramic views of the area and compiling them into this HDRI. So the center point of the HDRI is important. You're going to get the best results from having a camera view in the center of this HDRI if you're trying to look at the whole scene. One of the things that you can adjust is the projection center. And basically what the projection center is it's mimicking the real world placement of the camera. So if the camera was, higher up in the scene when the HDRI was taken, or it was closer to the ground, that'll affect how the HDRI displays. As you move out further away from the center, things will start to distort and sort of stretch. And this is where you're, aside from, moving the projection center around, you can see it actually adjusts, that's distorting and stretching some. So aside from moving that around, you have a number of other settings here in your details panel that you can change. So the first one here is the intensity. And the intensity is relative to the actual, again, HDRI file that you've made. So you can kind of think of it like a gamma setting to some extent. And, you can adjust that based on how you want your scene to appear. So this is something that's entirely up to you, entirely up to what fits the assets that you're going to put into the scene, etc. And as you switch between different HDRI files, just know that you'll likely have to adjust the intensity because it's relative to the actual HDRI asset that's in there. The next thing is the size. And so when we're talking about the size of the HDRI, I just put in a small number like 50, and I'm just zooming out. You can actually see what's happening with the HDRI. So again, if I change this from 50 to 10, and then 50 to 100, you can see it's really just growing that sphere of influence around our scene. So know that when you're adjusting the size, that's actually what's happening. So when you're in your scene, and you adjust these values, you can change how the sort of backdrop projects and feels as you move around the scene. So sometimes, and it feels like in this case, you'll get less stretching and a different feel and different look and movement with a larger scene. So that's one setting that you can adjust to get the look and feel that you're looking for. And then I already talked about the projection center, so I'm just going to zero these back out. You really shouldn't have to adjust the X and Y values unless, you're trying to get a particular part of the scene to show up in a particular viewpoint. And then the biggest one that you will want to consider adjusting is this, Z value of the projection center, and that'll really affect the flooring. Lighting distance factor. This is really, it's used to help if you have assets in the scene that don't quite fit the lighting of the HDRI. You can adjust this setting, and you can see that right away it sort of adjusts the lighting that's happening in the scene. So if you had something that wasn't quite fitting, you're able to sort of adjust the distance from the center of this object and the lighting, how the lighting affects it and that sort of stuff. So it's something that you can kind of play around with to make it work with objects inside your scene. Yeah, not too much more I could say on that. This is kind of a neat setting, this little checkbox here. If you check the box, and then if I play the level, it'll actually demonstrate it the best. Your scene sort of stops moving around with you. So you kind of get like this, limited use case effect, but I think you could create some cool effects with this. Like, it kind of feels like a bit of a dream world state. You could make something work with that. Really, a lot of these HDRIs, the purpose is to sort of create a atmosphere and a backdrop for one of your scenes. So if you were doing like a video take here, this is all static and you can have the actor sort of moving. Or where it's really useful is we pulled in some of the starter content, and I think in here, in shapes, is it in shapes? Where there's like a walls. Oh, here, architecture. We've got like these window sort of assets. So if we kind of put together like a makeshift little building here by dragging some of those in, you could this is really where you're going to get value out of like an HDRI, right? Is that now when you're passing a window, it looks like, there's a vast landscape outside, and then you're able to shield off, some of those distorting features that are happening at the corners. And, in this where we've got this one effect, this sort of projection parallax effect that's going on, you don't see, what's happening on the ground there. You're just seeing what's happening in the window, which actually looks quite good. So that's another way that you can use it. You don't have to have it on. It just kind of depends on, the look and the feel that you're going for, and it's going to be unique to your individual scene. So I think that's the biggest takeaway for you in this video, is that you've got those different settings, and you can set up your scene and then tweak the settings to sort of adjust your scene. Okay, last but not least is the mesh. So you saw when we zoomed out that this is currently a sphere. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch the HDRI to sort of demonstrate more specifically what some of these settings do. So I'm going to switch to these Misty Pines. And the reason being is they have more of a distorted floor and more problems with stretching. You can see the trunks are stretching there. So if I move to if I actually shrink this down quite a bit, there we go. Shrunk this down, you can see it's really stretching. But if I move to the corner or the edge of this sort of sphere before I go out of it, you'll see that because it's rounded, you really get this sort of stretching of the material, right? And again, you can play with all these factors. You can move the projection, the center of projection around to adjust how that's all looking, and you can get different looks and feels there. But one of the other things that you can do is you can change the shape of your structure. So with this sphere, it's really rounded around the bottom, and you can really see that in these bushes. But if I picked one of the square environments, like this is a square environment, but the sides are rounded, so it doesn't really fix the problem. But this really sharp one, you can now get sharp edges where you don't have that rounding blur effect. So if you were going to cut out the floor, and just have these nice hard edges, maybe that's a different look that you're going for, right? And it's just a different control factor. I'm going to move this HDRI down again, and I'm going to expose the floor. So here's another sort of way that you can deal with these, right? Is that if you don't like the projection that's on the floor and you're not going to use that for anything, is you can actually scale up. Whoops, I don't need to scale it that way. You can actually scale your actual floor, and then you can just use the HDRI as a backdrop around the sides, right? And if I click back on that HDRI, I go to the EnviroDome again. You're now back in this sort of dome parallax setting, and you've sort of got your own floor. So you could put in your own grass and things like that, and then it'll look a little different. But again, if you get to the edge here, you can see that it starts pulling away, right? So it really depends on where your character's perspective is, where your camera perspective is if you're doing video. But if you're doing games, it really is going to depend on where your character is and the camera that's following him, and what do you want the scene to look like, right? So now we've done this with a different floor. Is that the look that we're going for? Does that look realistic, or does it make more sense outside of the window to have sort of parallax effect? I think that's all of the settings that I'll go through in terms of this. And like I said, the main point that I was trying to get across is that, you can use these in your scenes, but you have a bunch of settings to sort of tweak it, and you're going to have to tweak it depending on what you're using it for and what the scene is. And you can use a combination of these different things to get the right effect for your scene. Cool. Okay, so with that done, I think what we'll do is we'll jump back to the actual HDRIs that we downloaded. So we downloaded a number of HDRIs here, and I'm just going to go to my downloads folder, and we downloaded this this forest and a couple of other ones here. So I'm just going to grab this Shanghai Bund, which we have as an HDRI. And then we have this forest file, which is actually an EKR file. So the easy ones are the Canary Wharf and the Shanghai. We can actually just drop them right into our content. So I'm just going to create a new folder here. New folder, HDRIs. I like to always color my folders so they're easy to find if I'm working on them. Make this kind of like a pinky red there. And then we literally can just drag and drop. Because we've got the plugin set up, we can literally just drag and drop these in, and they'll just pretty much work. So drag those in, and if we hover over them, you can see they're texture cube files, so it's interpreted them correctly. If we drag in the fowls or the forest here, I know I'm butchering the name of that. If we drag that in, you'll actually see that it doesn't come in as a texture cube. It just comes in as a regular sort of mapped file. So that's no good. That's not what we want. So we're going to delete that. And that's one of the issues that I was going to show you we can get around. We're going to delete that. The way that I got around it was there's some tools online. And if we just went to Google and just simply went convert EXR to HDR, you can see I've already went here. There's lots of other tools. I'm sure you guys can find your own. This one worked fine for me. You just go here, you pick the file that you want to convert. In our case, it's the forest file. Bring it in there. It'll allow you to do multiple, add more files. You can do multiple at once, and then you just hit convert, and then it'll just convert that over for you. Done. Download. for me. There we go. It's now an HDR file. And I can put it in with the rest of them. And then when I flip over to UE5 here, I can drag that in. Cool. So that's simple enough, right? That gets you around the EXR file extension, and now we've got these 3 new HDR files in here. So the next thing you could do is you can actually just swap those out, right? So if we wanted to put the Canary Wharf into our scene, there it is. But it doesn't look good. Same with these other ones. There's a problem when you import it that needs to be tweaked. These are just sort of blown out. Doesn't matter. All of the settings that I showed you won't fix the actual problem with these assets. And I'll just quickly show you what's up. So we don't like the look of that. So what we want to do is we want to open up the file. And within the file, there's a couple of things. Up at the top, it says imported as 4096 by 2048. So basically, you've got a value of up to 4K here, currently displayed as 1024 by 512, and then it tells you max in-game size is 512. So what they've done when you've imported this is they've actually compressed it down, and so that's why you're getting sort of that blurred out image. But because you have the original imported details, you can actually force it into 4K or 2K or 1K, whatever it is that you want. So there's 2 settings that you have to adjust. So in the MIPGen settings, instead of from texture group, you want to say no MIP maps. There we go. So that setting's applied. And then the other thing that you want to do is on the maximum texture, I don't know what the whole thing is, maximum texture size, this is where you can adjust it, right? So we know that our maximum imported is 4096. So we can actually put that in, and then it takes some time. You'll hear your, oh, mine was quick, but you may hear your computer going for a bit to get that done. And now we've actually upscaled this to 4K, and you can, using, the powers of 2, you can move this down to 2048 or 1024 or 512, all that sort of stuff, depending on, again, what it is that you're trying to do in your scene. Do you want a ton of detail in the backdrop or not? And so you'll notice that as soon as we did that, the quality of the asset significantly improved. So then let's just switch this over to the forest one. And again, it's blurry. So let's open up that asset, change it from texture group to no MIP maps. And then in this case, let's actually change the maximum texture to 2048, so we can show it at 2K. And the only reason that I'm changing the size is just to show you the difference between them and what it looks like. So it looks relatively high quality, right? So you could put 2K in there, save on a bit of performance, and maybe you're happy with that one, right? And you notice as I switch around these as well, is that you're getting different sort of lighting that comes out. And even some like bloom on the camera lens and things like that. It's kind of cool. Okay, last one, Canary Wharf. So let's put this one as 1024. Maximum texture 1024 and no MIP map. Boom, done. Cool. Now you have all of these HDRIs in here. And they're set up to be used in your level. And now we can actually go into, well, let's craft up a scene that actually works well with this. So I want to give us a little bit of room. So I want to make sure that our HDRI is decently sized. So you can see there, I've got it, 1163. Let's just make it 1100. And let's just make the projection center 1000 for now. That seems to look okay if I look around. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I don't see any problem with that. And then now we can start bringing in our KitBash assets. And this is what I did to sort of build that downtown setting. So in here, you've got these actors. these actors are BPs, and they're just made up of individual meshes. Most of them, I think, are just one-off meshes, but some of them are combined, right? So if you actually want the individual geometry, you can go into geometries here, and then they'll have like the individual assets on their own in here. But for our case, we're just going to use some of these pre-made blueprints. They seem to work well. Just be advised that when you do pull in these assets, it is going to take your machine a little bit to tell them likely. So we've got that. We'll actually pull this in twice. We will pull in some of these skyscrapers, sure, to use. Let's pull in this guy. Let's pull in another skyscraper. Cool, we've got some assets going. I'm gonna go into the building here. I'm just gonna double click on the blueprint. I wanna set up the collision so that our third person character doesn't fall through the floor. And I don't really care about the collision on the rest of these buildings. You can go ahead and set that up if you want to, but this floor is all I sort of care about for our demo. So I'm just gonna click on that. I'm gonna navigate to the asset, which will bring that up in our content browser. You can see it's highlighted there. And then I just want to make sure that the collision is enabled properly on this. So if I go up to, in UE5, it's in show, and you can show simple collision, you can show complex collision. So they've got complex, and they've got simple collision too. So all we got to do is just make sure that collision is turned on. Right. So on this asset, yeah, he's able to walk on this, and the collision is all set up. Perfect. I just wanted to make sure that so that we could walk around the level a little bit. Awesome. Cool. So we've got that set up. I'm going to pull this guy in close here. Some of the things that I want to do is, if we turn, I'll show you where my head's at. If I turn this HDRI back on, you can see there's some sort of gaps in the flooring and things like that. And so if you're actually going to be making a level with this, you kind of want to block, I think, some of those things off and put some, buildings and some geometry in this space. So it just kind of builds out that depth a little bit more, right? If I drop that there, and I could even, shrink it down, and then what you would do is you would never, have your camera venture out this way, or you would stop your character from being able to walk too far out this way. Let's kind of walk around and see what it looks like. I think those would have to go bigger, but anyways, we're getting more into like level design. I just really wanted to show it as a concept, some of the things that you could do. Right, you can throw that out there, and it just adds more depth. And then, like I was showing you at the beginning of the video, we've got this automatically lit from this HDRI. If we turned off the HDRI, you can immediately see the difference. It's literally, not even close in terms of looking nice, right? But we throw that back on, looks completely different, builds out all those extra buildings there. you're going to get a different look if you go to the top of the building. So you're going to have to, decide what you do in those cases. This is all stretching and you'd have to move that around. But again, it has to do with your camera, right? So if you're up here and your camera is always going to be at this level, then that's fine, right? But if your character is jumping and things like that, then you may not be able to get away with that HDRI exactly like that. But you could get away with it on this side, for example, right? What else? Oh yeah, and then, like I showed you at the beginning, you can actually swap this to Shanghai. And boom, you've just turned it from day to night, and look at that. That's pretty cool, right? If we went down to the floor here, and we kind of looked around our scene, you can just see the difference that just swapping out the HDRI does, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it. Last couple of things I'll say before we wrap it up is I left the sky sphere blueprint in here just to sort of really demonstrate, being able to what the difference is between turning on and off the HDRI backdrop. But it is actually redundant. So if you are going to use this, you would turn it off. It's not doing anything additional for you. All of your lighting is coming from your HDRI. You may have other reasons to run both, but just saying. The other thing is you can, with your right control and the L key, you can kind of bring up this toggle widget, and you can actually change your light source around to sort of match the scene. If your HDRI has an obvious light source, you likely want to match it to what your HDRI is showing, just to make it that much more believable. So if it felt like the light was coming from something like that, maybe that's what you want to do. But you will need, we had it out of the box with the third person character, but you will need a light source in the game to do that. I think that's it. So go tweak with the level, play with this. Really, this was really just to highlight the HDRIs, not build a perfect level. So yes, I recognize that there's a ton of gaps here. I would not leave this as is. We would build that out with, more trees and blocking artifacts and things like that. But it does give you, the access to the tools. It kind of shows you the general concept here and shows you how quickly we could actually throw something together that looks halfway decent. So hope you enjoyed that. If you do, you know the drill. Like, subscribe, all that sort of stuff, and we'll keep grinding away.